Okay, remember all the big numbers are here in this India Today magazine that's out tomorrow morning. But let's bring you the methodology at the moment. Total sample size was 12,143. 97 parliament constituencies were surveyed. 194 assembly constituencies across 19 states. So fairly widespread. And the field work was conducted between the 30th of December and the 9th of January. Let me just reiterate the big numbers first that we brought you. Vote share. What would be the vote share if elections were held today is what we asked. NDA is at 42%. The UPA is trailing at 25%. So the NDA has widened the lead as per this survey compared to May 2014. Others are 33%. How is all this translating into seats? What is the seat share? This was what we are saying would be the seat share if elections were held today. 360. Many say that figure may be a little incredulous. Many thought NDA had peaked in 2014. Not so according to this survey. UPA is still down and out. 60 seats, that very wide gap between the NDA and the UPA. Others at 123. But even so, it is clearly advantage Mr. Modi, advantage NDA if general elections are held today. Now all this is happening against the backdrop of that big decision taken by the Prime Minister on demonetization. So let's bring you the first numbers on that big step taken by the Prime Minister. What is the public opinion on demonetization? Curbing black money and corruption, 45% thought yes, it is doing that. Good for the economy, 35%. Add the two, and 80% think that demonetization has either curbed black money and corruption or is good for the economy. It's a political move before polls, as the opposition allege, only 7%. Weakening the economy, only 7%. Can't say 6%. We also, of course, asked whether demonetization, how was it implemented? Take a look at what the survey says. And here, the government has reason to worry because well implemented is 37%, could have been planned better 36%, badly implemented 19%, 8% say can't say. Add the two, more than half believe it could have been planned better or was badly implemented. So that's the one bad news for the government there. And we also asked that question as to, is there more pain than gain through demonetization? And 51% say yes, there's more pain. 45% say no. Can't say is 4%. So mixed bag is the best way to describe how the poll is looking at demonetization. That's the first lot of graphics that we have for you. And I want to bring in my guests at the moment. Raj Chengappa, Editorial Director, India Today, is still with us. Rajiv Dubey of Business Today is with us. Also joining me at the moment are our political guests. Abhishek Manu Singhvi of the Congress Party is with us. I'm also still with Nalin Kohli of the BJP is with us. And we're also joined by Rajiv Kumar, Senior Economist, also joins us. Appreciate. And Ashok Lahiri, also economist, joining us. Thank you all very much for joining us. Let's look at those numbers, gentlemen. Would I be right in saying mixed bag? 80% Raj Chengappa are saying government's done reasonably well when it comes to the economy and curbing black money and corruption through demonetization. But implementation, question mark.
You know, I think the paradox should be explained this. People have said there's tremendous amount of pain, but if they're saying that they still endorse Mr. Modi for it, that's a tremendous message, which means that Mr. Modi has struck a chord. They believe, as he did with development, when he rode to power on the slogan of development in 2014, he's got the right issue, which is corruption, and its most visible form, black money. And by taking steps to curb it, the people seem to have endorsed that huge step, because 80% say demonetization will be good for the economy, it will curb black money, and he's hit at the root of that by doing so. And therefore, that decisive gambit that he takes gives him the numbers, not just in terms of support for demonetization, but as you see, it feeds on to seat share, his personal popularity. These seem to add up considerably.
Let me get more reactions. Rajiv Dubey, are you surprised by these numbers? Because there's a sense that while Mr. Modi won the first battle on demonetization by sending out a strong message that it could curb corruption, is there a sense that maybe now, as we enter the end of January, a bit of realism is also sinking in and people are asking some questions about demonetization?
Well, I think if you look at it, there seems to be complete support as far as the attack on black money is concerned. But I think the pain that people have experienced over the past 76 days now, 75 days now, I think that's showing up. And if you look at anecdotal evidence, you would still find that about at the vendor level, at the small business level, the business is only back about 50% to 60%, no more than that. For a formalized economy, I heard people like M&M's Pawan Goenka say that 70 to 80% of the business is back in trucks, in cars, in two-wheelers and tractors. So there has been considerable pain, and I think that is beginning to hit. It's been 77 days. Only about 25% of the 500 rupee notes are actually still back in circulation.
25%
as of December 23rd, which was the last data that RBI has released, and only 2/3 of 2000 rupee notes. So there is still a long way to go before we actually get back to normal.
And yet people are giving the benefit of the doubt to Mr. Modi, which should clearly suggest something. And maybe what it suggests is that Mr. Modi at least politically has scored a slam dunk with demonetization, maybe created a rich versus poor divide. Someone gave me the example, Rajiv Kumar, is that if your bullock cart is stuck in the mud, but if you see a Mercedes whose tire has been punctured, you get delight in the fact that the rich seem to be suffering more than the poor. Dusron ke dukh mein sukh milta hai. Do you believe in that sense that might explain some of these numbers, why there seems to be some kind of an endorsement for the broad strategy of demonetization, Mr. Kumar?
Mr. Sardesai, I don't believe this is a question of creating a class conflict or a class war in the country. I think the better explanation is what you said yourself before, which is that people are sick and tired of the corruption which had become systemic, and they thought that demonetization is the right step, as it were, to drain the swamp and then hit at all the accumulated illegal wealth that people had. Now, whether or not the demonetization will affect will in some sense punish those who have got illegal wealth is yet to be seen. But the people are sure that without this move, the whole moral fiber of the society and the fear that without corruption you can't succeed in India has taken a knock. And I think that's a very big positive message for economics.
Right.
And it's not just a political message. Because you can't have economic growth and investment without there being the surety that there will be no corruption and greater transparency.
But no, I mean, let's be honest, the reality, anecdotal reality is that it's not as if corruption has disappeared, particularly low-level bureaucratic corruption. No one is certain in states that corruption has suddenly disappeared because of demonetization.
No.
Ashok Lahiri, I'm just trying to understand. Is this perceptional? Much of polling is perceptional, and the perception is the Prime Minister has taken a risk and he's being rewarded by the voter, at least as per our poll, for the risk that he has taken with demonetization. It's not so much about results on the ground at the moment, but the perception that he's a risk taker. This is a risk that he has taken, and for now they're willing to give him the benefit of doubt.
I think, Rajdeep, you have touched the right point. It's about perception. What the poll is showing is how people feel about it. Now, I think Indian people like bold decisions. Take bank nationalization by Indira Gandhi. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi took that decision. Economists were divided. But people thought it's a great thing for the poor people. Even here, what you find is that we have been talking about corruption right from 1950s, ever since a cabinet minister, not a cabinet rank, but a union minister was arrested and sent to prison. But this is the first time something has been done which touches everyone. And people are saying, yes, there is more pain than gain, but we trust you. We trust you that you will do something now which will get to the bottom of black money. And it's saying, you could have done it better, doesn't matter, now do it. So I think what the people are saying, we have suffered the pain in silence almost. It's remarkable the way people took it, and now they're saying, we are waiting to see, and the budget is coming, let's see. I'm expecting that the government will take some steps to catch those guys who have put all their money, black money, into the banks.
Okay, I'll come to that as to what are the options ahead, but there is one word you use, Mr. Lahiri, trust. And that's the word I want to take to Dr. Abhishek
just
Manu
make one
Singhvi.
point here?
You know, there's a sense, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, that these poll findings show that people trust Mr. Modi. It's not as if they are particularly happy with demonetization. Majority say it has caused more pain than gain. They are unhappy with the implementation, and yet they are willing to give the benefit of doubt to Prime Minister, and it's a trust factor. He carries more credibility than the opposition's campaign against him, and in perceptual terms, therefore, is actually scoring, dare I say, a slam dunk.
Rajdeep, the problem with this is that we have to start with an assumption
Yes.
that your polls must be taken as true and that they can be replicated on a statewide or nationwide basis, which is the assumption I make,
Yes.
with the usual caveats that that's totally untrue and I don't accept it. But anyway, let's leave that aside.
Yes.
But there is a given. Now, you know, I find that there is a huge disconnect, Rajdeep. You have just yourself shown the disconnect. Despite A, despite B, despite C, we trust the Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister is an individual which you may imagine has some support. For a moment, let's assume that. I think there is a huge disconnect there is between the despite ABCs and translating them into votes for his party at the state level. There I don't agree with you. You may still have trust for the Prime Minister. He will do something in the long run. He will be good for the central government. For a state election in Punjab, or for a state election in Uttarakhand, for a state election in UP, or for that matter Manipur and Goa.
Agreed, sir.
Whether that general, I am assuming completely with you, that general feeling of trust for the Prime Minister will translate into vote for the contender BJP there.
I'm not saying that, sir. Sir, this is a national poll. Sir, this is a national mood. This is a mood. This is a perceptional poll. It may not translate into victories for Mr. Modi in Uttarakhand, in UP, or in Punjab.
No, that's why I'm not.
But
That's the point I'm making.
People are trusting him on the big decision he has taken on demonetization. That's my point.
No, that's what
you
I'm
all
saying.
ran a campaign against him. The campaign doesn't seem to have worked.
Therefore, I'm agreeing with you, Rajdeep. Rajdeep, I'm agreeing with you because you see, it's a journey without a destination.
Yes.
A mood poll is a mood poll. So at the moment, people are trusting in the sense that they are hoping for the future. But I mean, that can change any time.
Agreed.
According to me, the true effects of demonetization will be known after June. That's my view.
Okay.
And this mood is something which is just it's a subjective thing. For January 2017,
that's right. It's absolutely well put.
It does not mean anything else.
Sir, I am not trying to say it's anything else.
With bated breath.
Sir, it's the first.
And B, that the translation into the February votes, is impossible to predict. I don't agree with
I am not
this at all.
So this is not a poll predicting what will happen in the state elections. We are just assessing the mood as it exists, as you rightly put, in January of 2017. What it will be in June, we don't know. That will be known in the next mood of the nation. But Nalin Kohli, before I come to the next set of graphics, I just want to ask you this. The implementation, and that's where the dichotomy is coming. People are saying the Prime Minister is working on corruption, he's working against black money, and yet are questioning implementation, either poorly implemented or could have been done better, adds up to more than 55%. Should that worry you? Because in the months ahead, at the end of the day, that's perhaps where the voter will look at. How is it affecting me? Not in general perceptual terms, but in actual real terms. If people start losing jobs, if the economy slows down, then Mr. Kohli, do you concede that demonetization may actually be a gamble that didn't work? And the jury is out on that.
Let me try to weave in answering that. I'll weave what actually Mr. Chengappa, Mr. Kumar and Mr. Lahiri said, Dr. Lahiri said. And I think the point was that yes, we trust the Prime Minister, and there is great in your Mood of the Nation survey, support for the demonetization move as a move against black money. It isn't a negative thing in terms of how you were putting that the tire of the Mercedes is punctured, so the person whose bullock cart is stuck, he is celebrating. No, it is about the norm that had changed. When not paying your tax was the norm, and those who paid the tax or those who are honest were the aberration. So I think there's this great mood that yes, can we get out of this thing? And it's shocking, the figure that Prime Minister Modi said on the 30th of December address. Only 2.4 million, 24 lakh people declare an income. I mean, that's it. They don't declare an income. That's their total
Mr.
income.
Kohli, have Indians become more honest overnight?
So I think, we need to recognize it for
Come on,
that.
have
Now,
Indians actually become more honest?
The point.
Have Indians actually become more honest? That hasn't happened yet.
Rajdeep, I'll answer that. But Rajdeep, you have answered the question what you believe. But you will have to allow me to answer that.
Yes, sir.
I believe that firmly that a large part of India is honest. But just somehow we can't celebrate that honesty because the examples that we see in front of us are dishonest.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that you don't have honest people in society. Look at the Padma Shri, Padma Vibhushan list. In the Padma Shri, you've got people who have never been celebrated and should have been celebrated always. So I think that's, we need to see it with a mixed bag. But coming back to demonetization, if Mr. Modi was honest on the 8th of November that this is going to be painful, and I ask of you to suffer this pain for the next 50 days, the people are equally honest to say, we support you. And yes, we felt a little bit of pain.
Sir,
and I think that's a very honest situation, and it's a healthy thing. Now on to Dr. Singhvi.
Mr.
Dr.
Kohli,
Singhvi, of course, I must answer that. With your permission, very briefly.
Yes.
Very briefly. One is just on Dr. Singhvi's point. I think Dr. Singhvi today was in a classic case where he has a poor brief and he was doing his best as an eminent lawyer. But you see, in journalism, we were taught, assume is the most dangerous word because assume is as you and me. You never assume. Because assumption and presumption is the mother of all goof-ups. So I think if Dr. Singhvi is going to build everything on assumptions, that answers the question. But I will agree with one thing he says. And that what he has said is that the effects of...
the real effects of demonetization will be faced in June. We are losing your line. I want to come to the next set of graphics. The India Today Karvi survey has also asked, has demonetization dented the RBI's image? The RBI's image as an autonomous unit. And take a look at what our survey says. Our survey clearly says that on demonetization, 15% strongly agree that it has affected, 38% also agree. Add the two, 53%, more than half are saying the autonomy of the Reserve Bank of India has been affected. So clearly the RBI is not being seen in positive light. Should the NDA also crack down on election funding? 61% are saying yes, they should. Only 21% are saying no, can't say, says 17%. Should income tax be lowered in the next budget, which comes up in less than a week? 68% are saying yes. No is 18%, can't say are the rest. But clearly what we are also seeing at the moment is the flip side of demonetization. And that should also cause some worry. Rajiv Kumar, what this survey is showing is that the Reserve Bank in particular, its credibility has taken a bit of a beating. And that is one of Mr. Modi's weaknesses. Institutions are being seen to have been weakened under Mr. Modi. Would you agree or not?
A two-point answer, Rajdeep, which is one that it is actually a rather disturbing that implementation and execution, which were considered to be the strongest suit of Mr. Modi, have come in for flak and have them shown up to be not as good as they should have been. The second part is that no, I don't think the institutions have been destroyed, sort of undercut or whatever, because the credibility of the RBI at the end of the day is in controlling inflation and safeguarding our external financial accounts. And to make sure that India is never into a external financial emergency as it was in 1990, and that inflation doesn't perk up. And maybe, therefore, that as you go forward, RBI will gain greater credibility if we achieve higher growth with lower inflation. The one last point that I would wish to make is that this autonomy of the RBI is actually played up unnecessarily. It is at best a technical autonomy and not in some sense an autonomy from the sovereign of the country. RBI has to be a team player and has to take its directions from the political leadership of the country. I think several governors in the past have said so, and therefore I think it is time for us to not harp on this autonomy too much and think of and better to think of it as a team which is trying to control the macroeconomic situation of the country.
Can I bring in Ashok Lahiri also on that? Ashok Lahiri, with every finding on demonetization, mixed, there are mixed findings. Again, implementation, government gets thumbs down. On the broader issue of curbing corruption, thumbs up. On Reserve Bank of India and its autonomy, thumbs down. I'm just wondering whether there is a big picture that is emerging. Politically, the big picture is Mr. Modi is firmly India's Neta number one. On demonetization, are you seeing a big picture emerging, Mr. Lahiri?
Rajdeep, coming back to your point on demonetization and the RBI, if you look at the history of RBI, 1946, Sachintaman Deshmukh was the governor. He didn't like the idea of demonetization. In 1978, Dr. I.G. Patel was the governor. He didn't like the idea of demonetization. The government did it through an ordinance. The difference this time is the government didn't do it by ordinance, but the government did it on the recommendation of the RBI board. And what people are questioning is, did the RBI board apply itself fully? Of course, the governor has said that he was on the same page. Now, RBI autonomy, there are tomes written on RBI autonomy or central bank autonomy. I agree with Rajiv Kumar that RBI should be a team player with the government. But still, it's an independent source of advice. And what I think, including some very eminent former governors are saying, there is scope to doubt that this time the RBI did it properly. Perhaps I thought an ordinance would have been better, but ordinance, the question is whether it would have gone through the Rajya Sabha.
You know, but I just want to stick to that for a moment, because I think somewhere, Raj Chengappa, there is a sense that Mr. Modi's strength is also his weakness. His strength, as the poll says, he's a risk taker. The weakness perhaps is there's an element of arbitrariness when you take risks, or whether you take everyone along with you, including perhaps people who are more trained economic minds than you are. Do you believe that Mr. Modi still has, the jury is still out in that sense on demonetization? This survey perhaps has some kind of a cautionary signal also. People are still believing that the pain is greater than gain. And that for Mr. Modi is a bit of a cautionary signal there.
Agree. The larger message that the people are sending is, we appreciate what you've done. We believe you're on the right track. Black money is a serious problem. Corruption is a serious problem. But it is the measure that you've taken on demonetization is not a full stop. You've got to pursue it. You, as one of the findings that you've indicated, go after political corruption. They are very concerned about that. And the fact, you know, if you look at it, they're also very worried about the fact that it was implemented poorly. The blame doesn't come to Mr. Modi, because the larger good that they hope would come out of it still gives them the credit. But they're blaming the institutions that run it. And I think if you look at the other things that they are pointing out as you get down to the survey, particularly on jobs, if you look at inflation, you will see that there is a lot of caveats to what the endorsement the voter has given in this poll.
You know, Rajiv Dubey, on the same time, most people are hoping that Mr. Modi will now lower income tax, that you need to give some kind of a sweetener. People have gone through enormous pain. Now the time has come for sweetener. In that sense, are we seeing perhaps, and Mr. Modi is very quick to realize public mood, that he will have to give some sweeteners in the budget?
Looks like it, and I think it will start with the corporate tax, because that's a commitment that the government has made already to reduce corporate tax to 25% by fiscal 18-19, which is the year, the next year. And you cannot reduce corporate income tax 5% in 1 year, so it might be 2% this year, maybe 3% next year. And if you do reduce corporate tax by 2% to 28% this year, you are the personal income tax at 30% is untenable, so it has to come down to 28%. So I suppose that if corporate income tax is going to be reduced by 2 or 3%, the personal income tax will also have to be reduced by 2 to 3%.
Rajdeep, may I quickly come in into this, and to point out that the India Today magazine, which is carrying the full poll, will be out tomorrow, and in that there is a specific question asked about income tax, whether they wanted a reduction. Something like 68% said yes, we want a reduction. So your sweetener question comes in there.
I'm going to give a final word to you, Abhishek Manu Singhvi. The big picture that you're seeing at the moment, is the big picture at the moment that round one in demonetization has been won by the Prime Minister? Purely again in perceptual terms. Let's not go into votes for the moment. In perceptual terms.
Not in the least, Rajdeep. I think you raised two more important questions, and there's no question of hiding those behind the phrase big picture. First, RBI autonomy. As you know, I wrote an article on it. I think the biggest loser in this game till now as an institution has been the RBI. I think you heard just words of studied moderation by Dr. Lahiri. I'm going to be more blunt and therefore more honest. It is absolutely deplorable the way the RBI has acted. I think the institution of RBI, and more than that, the office of governor, has been brought into disrepute. He is made to look like a puppet. The suppression attempts at RTI suggest that there is, to suggest that there is secrecy about who attended the meeting, what were the minutes of the meeting, as it's a national security issue, is laughable. All it obviates is accountability. I think anybody who reads section 26, as I pointed out in my article, shows that the RBI is the only one which can take that decision. It may have a genuine recommendation or suggestion by the government. That sequence can't be reversed. It has never happened before. This time, if you see three things only which are now in the public domain, Rajdeep, through the parliamentary committee, a day before it is told to the RBI, which is treated like a puppet, like a direction. The people called in one day, how many can attend, you know, in 1 day's notice? What are the minutes, we don't know. A cabinet is called which doesn't know a thing about the agenda. It is doubtful if there was an agenda for that cabinet meeting. Nobody has produced it. They stand outside, it is announced as a decision. I think this is destroying institutions in India in 24 to 48 hours, and it is nothing but the autocratic will of one person. This is very sad. You may get away with it this time, but it should not happen again, because it will become a precedent repeatedly, and it's contrary to the RBI Act. Secondly, Rajdeep, demonetization by itself is not a panacea for any of the things we've been discussing on this program. What all that your survey is saying, the mood of the nation is expecting that corruption will lessen, black money will lessen, digitization will increase. Not one of them flows from or is intrinsically intertwined with demonetization. If you had to do these things, you could do them separately anyway. You didn't do them separately, you suddenly pressed a button. Let's hope and wait that the separate things will be carried on and will achieve some result.
Okay.
I have yet to see anything drastic on the separate things, and it may take 1 to 2 years before the jury is out, before the jury verdict comes on those things.
Okay, the jury is still out. I want to give, no sir, you've spoken. Let me give 30 seconds to Nalin Kohli. You've made serious
I'd like to have a
allegations.
quick yes.
You've made
I'd like to
serious
have a quick
question of the 30 seconds only, Mr. Kohli. Keep it sharp. Quick response to what you heard from Dr. Singhvi. The RBI's autonomy has indeed been eroded by the Prime Minister.
Sharp. And I'll borrow the first word.
Yes.
I'll borrow the first word of Dr. Singhvi, which is blunt. I will be equally blunt too. I'll take all the adjectives he done and I'll transpose it to the real situation. Because he used the word puppet twice, and he also said about the degradation of institutions. That's exactly what 10 years of the UPA was. Where the Prime Minister's institution had become a puppet, there was one person who pressed the button, that was the words he used just now for the RBI, for every institution in the country. So I think we'll rest our case and let the people and the mood of the nation decide who's right and who's wrong.
Okay, let me on that note end this segment. Clearly, it's a mixed bag. I think the way to look at it at the moment is
answer to my question.
It's a mixed bag. Just a minute, it's a mixed bag. When we return, we'll look at the other big step that has been taken in the last 3 months, the so-called surgical strikes against Pakistan. Biannual survey of India today is showing clearly that Narendra Modi remains India's Neta #1. The verdict on demonetization throwing up a mixed bag. People supporting demonetization in terms of the overall strategy to curb corruption, but questioning the implementation and saying there's been more pain than gain. The other big story, of course, is the surgical strikes that took place in late September in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What is the opinion on the surgical strikes? 58% believe it was required, not required was 29%, can't say was 13%. Opinion on Pakistan policy of the government. Clear, consistent policy was 41%. There is no coherent policy was 34%. Can't say was 25%. Handling of Pakistan relations. Satisfactory was 62%. Bungled badly was 23%. Can't say was 15%. Raj Chengappa, mixed bag when it came to demonetization. On surgical strikes, greater clarity. There seemed to be far more in support of what the Prime Minister and the government did than those who are questioning and criticizing it.
Absolutely. We go back before the surgical strikes, Mr. Modi was being criticized for having a flip-flop policy on Pakistan. In one fell swoop, the surgical strike changed the narrative. Here was a Prime Minister willing to take a decisive step, succeeded in the mission with our troops coming back safely and having done the damage, and then control the narrative in terms of the fact that in terms of the blowback that was there was fairly well controlled. So I think the appreciation that you're seeing in both these answers that is there, that people believe that his Pakistan policy is proceeding satisfactory and he's handling it well, comes from the surgical strikes which they endorse. So in that sense, Mr. Modi has turned around the narrative in Pakistan, which was earlier quite negative after Pathankot and the fact that he'd gone to meet Mr. Nawaz Sharif, greet him in Lahore, and everyone thought it was another Mr. Vajpayee and Kargil affair.
Again, Abhishek Manu Singh, again it's coming down to the messaging. Again, it seems to be coming down to the narrative, both on demonetization and on surgical strikes. The Prime Minister, all said and done, for all your criticism, appears to have won these battles. I'm not saying on demonetization, I'll accept that the jury will be is still out on that. But clearly on surgical strikes, people like the idea of the chappan ki chhati, muscular Prime Minister taking on Pakistan.
I think these are very transient, subjective phases, Rajdeep. First of all, your against and can't says added together are a substantial amount on all three questions. I think you must add them together. And that is of the very, very big assumption that all these figures are correct, because I don't think these sample sizes mean anything. But that apart, surgical strike is a very major issue, Rajdeep. In no country in the world will not a surgical strike give a feel-good factor. There is no doubt about it. In any culture, any country, any context, it gives you a feel-good factor. How permanent it is, people think a lot before they translate it into anything else other than a feel-good factor. I think if you start doing surgical strikes without a consistent long-term policy about that strike, a one shot in the arm, a shoot and scoot, a one time just to get out of a difficult situation, that is pretty dangerous for the country. After the surgical strike, we've had lots and lots of sneaky attacks and more cost in lives of soldiers in this country than ever before.
So you're saying the jury is still out?
The cold hard statistics show.
So you believe the jury is still out?
Mr. Modi into a feel-good factor. Very seriously out. And if you add up all the can't says, not only out, certainly and seriously out, that's following your figures.
Yes.
According to me, if you don't follow your poll, the people in this country just see it as a feel-good factor when it was done, but don't see it either in changing the zigzag policy for Pakistan, in why Mr. Modi rushes to lunch, picks up the phone on the one hand, then sulks and doesn't talk on the other. I think none of that has changed. And the fact that our soldiers are dying in larger numbers than ever before, I'll finish in 2 seconds, Rajdeep, the three statistics are telling. In the UPA government and the post-2014, statistic number 1, soldiers' deaths, statistic number 2, ceasefire violations, and statistic number 3, cross-border incidents have humongously increased.
Can I?
That's the code.
So there is, so we are, and the word used is post-truth. I'm just wondering whether in a post-truth society, the ability in a sense to use hype, use effective messaging is where Mr. Modi is beating you, and that's Nalin Kohli the question. The truth, and there is a point in which Dr. Singhvi says is true. It's not as if cross-border attacks have stopped since the surgical strikes. Demonetization has caused more pain than gain. But I'm just wondering, is Mr. Modi at the end of the day succeeding in messaging? But sooner or later the reality will strike. There are still 2 years to go.
Well, Rajdeep, I'm going to come on 2 figures also. That's what I was pulling out.
Yes.
But I'll come to them later. The first is that to believe that a surgical strike would be done for a feel-good, I mean, I would respectfully disagree in totality with what Dr. Singhvi is saying. The surgical strike had a clear objective. It had to send a message. You eliminated terrorists who were waiting to come in and wreak havoc. And wreak havoc on whom? Indian citizens, innocent people. 30, 40 odd terrorists eliminated in a single blow. Told clearly, sending a message that India is not waiting here, that our citizens will be slaughtered like lamb at the will and fancy of Pakistan on its blow hot, blow cold policy. With regards to the policy itself, whether there should be talks or not, the hand of friendship is always out. But the hand of friendship is not a hand of weakness. It's a hand of friendship which has to be reciprocated. Then go back to the cozy court speech of Prime Minister Modi. Our fight is not with the people of Pakistan, but a segment of the establishment that is vehemently, consistently opposed to India. There's no flip-flop. There's clarity that Indian blood matters, as do Indian citizens when you see it in the tweets of the Ministry of External Affairs. When an Indian cries out for help, the unknown Indian matters in this government, unlike the statistics of the past. And let's come to the statistics, as Dr. Singhvi was eloquently quoting.
Yes.
I've got my whole state of statistics. Between 2004 and, if you look at 9, civilians dying in 2004, 886, 1212, 1013, 1007. And if I come down to the last 2 years, 2015 and 2016, 181 and 194. As compared to 407 in 2014. So, I mean, the figures are also lower. Yes, obviously Pakistan would like to escalate that higher, but that doesn't mean that the policy has failed.
Okay.
And it clearly shows that there is a prime minister here and a government here willing to take that step for the interest of Indians, irrespective,
Sir,
and take that risk to protect the life of an innocent Indian. The Congress can criticize it, but they criticize everything.
Okay, but the question is whether the gap may be there at the moment between perception and reality. On the perception front, in a post-truth society, Mr. Modi is well ahead of his competition. The people seem to be perceiving him as this strong leader. What is the reality? One more question before I end this Mood of the Nation, India Today Karvi poll, bringing you what's the mood of the nation as we end January of 2017. The impact of Donald Trump. This is what question we asked in our poll. On Indo-US ties, 43% said they will improve. 28% said they will remain the same. 12% said deteriorate. Can't say was 17%. So clearly at the moment, Mr. Trump too enjoying a bit of a honeymoon with the Indian electorate. That might change in the months ahead. Okay, the 5 big takeaways. NDA to win 360 seats. Let's give you the 5 big takeaways from this poll. NDA to win 360 seats. I'm not convinced of those numbers. I've told Raj Chengappa, and to that extent, where are they going to get those additional seats? We don't know. UPA to get 60 seats if general elections are held now. But clearly advantage NDA. We could dispute whether it's 300 or 360, but they're well ahead. The other big takeaway. Prime Minister Modi's popularity remains high. 65% say Mr. Modi is best suited to be next Prime Minister. 28% picked Rahul Gandhi as the best alternative. So clearly there is a Tina factor at work. That's the second big takeaway. Third takeaway, demonetization. The jury is still out and there is a cautionary story there. 51% are saying demonetization is more pain than gain, and that's something that should worry the Prime Minister, particularly in the months ahead and in the state elections ahead. I want to make that point. State elections are different from national elections. Keep that in mind, and those state elections may see the BJP facing greater challenges. Takeaway number 4. 58% say surgical strikes against Pakistan were required. So Mr. Modi gets a clear thumbs up when it comes to surgical strikes against Pakistan. Those are the 4 big takeaways. My own takeaway, in a post-truth society, the opposition at the moment is unable to offer a sustained challenge to Mr. Modi. Their politics remains vacuous and they need to find a more credible way of tackling the Prime Minister. Maybe the Mahagathbandhan is their only option when it comes to winning elections, but they also need to set the agenda. It's the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, who is setting the agenda on most key issues. Would that be a fair way to put it? That compared to August, when you did the last poll, and certainly compared to January, when you had Rahul Gandhi on your cover, you now have Mr. Modi squarely on your cover with the 2,000 rupee notes on top. The New India Today says Modi gains currency. Your sense that these 3 months, the 2 big decisions he took, have given him the advantage?
Certainly. He's bet big and he has won big. That's
the first round.
But let's also add, if you look at what he's done in the past year, 2016, he has shed the suit boot Sarkar image that Rahul had pushed onto him. He now appears pro-poor. He has taken the Congress plank away from them. And if you look at the other big thing, on corruption, it was AAP that was considered as the biggest crusader. Mr. Modi has taken that plank as well. But Rajdeep, I will take your caveats. This is not the end of it. This is the beginning for him. He has to follow up with a lot of action. There are serious caveats that are there, particularly in terms of implementation of demonetization. And if you look at the big issues, jobs, inflation, people are really, really concerned about it, apart from the fact that he must take corruption forward.
Okay, so in a sense, as we reach the halfway term of the Narendra Modi government, it is advantage to the Prime Minister. And it means, of course, that he is in pole position heading into possibly 2019. But in elections and in India, much can change. A week is a long time in politics. Who knows what the next Mood of the Nation poll will show in August. For all the details, don't forget to miss the revamped India Today. Narendra Modi making the cover once again. Who knows who will make the cover come August. Remember, next week, the big Uttar Pradesh poll survey as well. UP could be a turning point as well. The nation's mood could keep changing. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you, Raj, and the entire group of analysts who joined us. That's it on the Mood of the Nation. I just want to say, with the tricolor in my pocket, Happy Republic Day. Let's celebrate this day. Jai Hind.